Hey guys, how's it going? We're talking about the Las Vegas weekend. We'll be talking the Truck, Xfinity, and Cup Series in this video. I have a lot of information to go over, and I'm assuming, or at least I'm going to go into this with the mindset that I have a lot of new people watching my stuff who might not know who I am, whatever the case may be. And I'll just be giving you a lot of information here, so I'm sorry if it's a lot to go over at once. But here we are. We're talking about 1.5s. Now, we're going over the Cup Series schedule for the sake of this. I understand the Trucks run a different schedule. I know the Xfinity Series runs a different schedule, but we're looking at the Cup Series for this discussion for the next minute and a half here. Okay, the intermediates, 1.5s, whatever you want to call them. Okay, the cookie cutter tracks that we go to week in and week out most of the time. Not the short tracks, not the road courses, whatever. I like to use that data combined, okay? I use Las Vegas, Homestead, Darlington, Dover, Texas, Kansas, and Charlotte all together, okay? I use Pocono in a running year-by-year basis. Once that race has been ran, I integrate that data into it, but I do not use that, entering each intermediate track or for the year. And we'll talk about that once we get to the Cup Series as well. I also use that data for Michigan, but I do not include that data when we're moving forward throughout the year. What else? That's pretty much That's pretty much the main points of my analysis. Long story short, every track now is a high-wear racetrack. It doesn't necessarily matter how different Dover is compared to Darlington. You see similar data at these tracks. You see similar laps ran at these tracks. I know we're running 400 laps at Dover, and we run 267 at most 1.5s outside of the Coca-Cola 600, but still data points that I like to look at, especially running position and so on and so forth related to that. What we're going to see today is the NASCAR track analysis put together by Stukas and his stuff. Now, he looks at things a bit differently, or at least when he makes these, because we are looking at contest data and what we see from an analysis report of the DFS contest and how we approach DFS. So that is slightly different from the data that I use, but still very helpful. Secondly, we'll be looking at how I rank the drivers in the Cup Series. Once we get to that point, I do it a bit differently than certainly Stukas and probably other people. But yet again, we're just doing a flat preview of the 3 weekends races here. Now, what do we look at these tracks? Just a quick overview. Well, clearly we want the faster guys, duh. But we typically want 1-2 lap leaders in most situations here. Most of the Truck Series races, we see them running. I just went blank on the amount of laps that the Truck Series runs at these individual tracks. Give me like 17 seconds here. We see them running anywhere from like 130 to 150 on most of the intermediate tracks. And because of that, we see lap leaders being less important. But with that said, with Las Vegas and Kansas specifically, we sometimes see these races go greener than normal. So we see, a green flag pit stop in stage 3 with people trying to conserve fuel and get on different strategies. So we do, while we have less laps compared to the other series, there is a possibility, and a real possibility, that we see multiple lap leaders in the Truck Series races at these 1.5s, okay? And then as you slowly move up for Xfinity and Cup, that's whatever. Like, I'm trying to get the basic, stuff out of the way before we start diving in, so I don't have any questions that I have to answer as we analyze the stuff. When we look at the Truck Series here, and yet again, Stukas is looking at Charlotte, Kansas, and Las Vegas. Now, in the Cup Series, he is not looking at Charlotte due to the increase in laps that the Coca-Cola 600 runs. That'll see, that, at least with the data that we're looking at here from a contest standpoint, that obscures or kind of skews the data because there's so many laps in that race. But these are the tracks that we are looking at for this discussion here. This is available in the TrueDFS Discord. We're also going to be looking at the lap-by-lap stuff for the previous Cup Series, which these tools should be available on the site pretty soon, okay? Obviously, by April, they will be up for sure, but I'm pretty sure we're going to try and get them up either by this weekend or at least next week for you guys to be able to use them freely and stuff. We look at dominator points by finishing position, of course, like the lap or the race winner in the Cup Series, in the Truck Series, is most likely the guy who ran away with the race, who had the fastest car, so on and so forth. We look at fastest laps. It's very, very correlated to, if you're going to win the race, you're going to have the most amount of fast laps in this series. You can't fake speed. When we're looking at the Truck Series and we're looking at the 36-car field, we see very rare instances of fast laps coming from the back of the field. Now, that could be given to people who are taking the wave around and want to go, and so they technically restart they're technically taking the green flag on the restart at a higher mile per hour than the leaders, since the leaders are rolling through a restarted zone at like 70 miles per hour, 65 depending on the track. You have your wave around car coming through, getting his lap back, trying to catch the field. He might technically cross that line at the start of the restart at 99 miles an hour or something. Over the course of the entire lap, he ends up with the fastest lap. That's why we see fast laps, two guys who sometimes get the wave around and stuff like that. We look at laps led by finishing position, very, very heavily correlated to your race winner, with your secondary, with the guy who finishes second, usually holding on to those. Now, granted, we do have situations where people speed, and those are speed during green flag pit stops are involved in an instant. They get in the wall, whatever the case may be. These are the instances where we see the laps led be kind of scored down here or pushed down here in these races. But that is, those are the, what is it? That's just how it is. We see the distribution. We see the finish distribution as well for your lap leaders and stuff here, and your fast lap drivers and stuff. Now, yet again, this is what I like to look at specifically is now, unlike I guess you could say this kind of for all three series, but you're noticing that, your number one lap leader and fast lap driver, and even the number two, okay, we're not really seeing them come from one individual starting position in these races here. And I'm not really even concerned about the name specifically. I mean, obviously we see Kyle Busch's in here, we see Majeski's, we see whatever the case may be, but we are looking at just the fastest guys at the time of the season, of the year, of the season. Like we're looking at in the past, like 2022, who are the fastest guys here? Front row and Kyle Busch. Those are the guys who were killing the field in the era of this. Once we continue to go through and stuff like that, and you're going to notice that it's just the fast teams. Okay, we're not getting some rinky-dink, trucker team from South Carolina or something leading laps here. We are looking at the big team, so that already excludes 26 drivers of the 36. We're looking at any given week. We kind of have an idea of the top 10 guys who are going to fight to have laps led in the fastest cars in the field. We typically see that over the course of the season. Either that's the data you want to use. Obviously, we're at the start of the year, so we're kind of not flying by the seat of our pants here, but we have to really look at the practice lap speeds that these drivers have compared with their qualifying effort. And then kind of going backwards and looking at where they ran last year, because they're going to practice and qualify during the day and then race at the night, or in the evening hours at Las Vegas. And so the track is going to be drastically hotter during practice than it will be during the race, but we still have a good indicator of where these guys are coming from. So it's the truck series, specifically at intermediates, are not always your number one pole sitter getting the laps led. If anything, we are seeing situations where the number one pole sitter, sometimes, depending on now, yet again, Roger Cruz here, you can also see him as a situation of starting up front. Didn't have a gigantic amount of laps led and fast laps, but had the fastest car and was very cheap on the night, or on the slate. But we're noticing we don't see the pole sitter always being here. We're seeing second, third, fourth, fifth. We do have a trend. We do have a bit of a trend of a guy who necessarily isn't the fastest car starting first. So we're not going on a limb here. We're not looking at salaries. We're not looking at this weekend's. I mean, we are obviously previewing this weekend's race, but we're not looking at salaries and stuff right now. All this depends on the grid, but there is an inkling. There is a situation where, hey, man, pole sitter might want to consider going overweight or underweight, depending on who that is, because there are situations where the guy who started second, third, or fourth ends up having the best car. They just didn't have the best qualifying lap for whatever reason, and they're going to end up being the best lap leader here. You look at the amount of DraftKings points that these guys are scoring here out of laps led and fast laps, and yet again, these are the teams that you want to focus on. Now, obviously, front row is there, okay? Excuse me. Nick Sanchez. Now, this is actually pretty impressive, because this is pretty much just Nick Sanchez carrying this. We see Kyle Busch Motorsports, which can pretty much be migrated into Spire, okay? So when we're looking at this weekend's race, Spire, Tricon, front row, maybe ThorSport. Like, those are your four teams. Your main lap leader is going to come from one of those four teams, and that's pretty much where we're at here. We're seeing that. We have a lot of situations where people end up getting wrecked out from the front. We see very high volatility, specifically at Vegas, due to wrecks on restarts entering turns 1 and 2 and how light the cars get. So we see a lot of potential for wrecks, and this isn't even, I mean, this is Las Vegas, Kansas, at Charlotte, but we are seeing situations of a lot of volatility of fast guys being involved in crashes. Now, why is that? Let's say you're a fast guy and you start, second, third, or fourth. We have a random yellow that is kind of in between your strategies of when you want to pit or what you want to do in situations during the race, and you end up pitting or you stay out or whatever, and you end up starting like 8th, 9th. We have some people stay out, whatever. You get shuffled to like 9th, 10th, 11th and stuff, and then hey, whoopsie daisy, that's where the crashes happen on restarts. And so we have fast guys that are just kind of off sequence, really no fault of their own, being in the danger zone and being involved in wrecks. So because of that, we don't really see a lot of place differential in the back of the field outside of like super, super fast cars, right? Outside of guys who completely mess up and start last. But we do see quite a lot of upside for people who are starting, in the 20s, certainly in the 20s of the, value plays and stuff. Like high 20s, like if you're starting like 29th, like, the value plays for this weekend that have a high chance of gaining, 9, 10 place differential are the people who are going to start anywhere from like 33rd or 32nd, 31st, 30th, 29th, 28th, all the way to say like 21st, 22nd. Those are the guys who realistically have a chance of getting 10 plus place differential points. And we're seeing that, shown here. And that's mainly due to people who are typically trying to run in the top, 15 or start in the top 15, start in the top 20. Running issues here. Your scoring thresholds for the intermediates in the truck series. Obviously, we have less laps than the other two series, and so we see the scoring thresholds be lower, pretty much right at bottom 40s for the most part for your top 10 guys. So yet again, if you just can't realistically see somebody scoring at least near 40, they're kind of unplayable. Okay, it's not a sense of we're just writing guys off, but if they're outcomes, in a percentage, whether you're using Sims or whatever the case may be, or if you just like thinking out loud, like, hey, what is the percentage that this guy scored over 40 points? If it's pretty low and he needs a lot of help to get there, probably not seeming like a good play for the truck series. Yet again, the median is, right at 30, 40, 42. Like this is pretty much the bottom realm of that. We're already trying to get your major lap leaders, so chasing the top two is kind of irrelevant. We're already kind of doing that here. We're mainly trying to figure out what the other, 3 to 15 guys are at. In previous live shows and stuff, when I would talk about my own projections and stuff, I usually talk about how if there's like a 36 car field, I normally have anywhere between 14 to 16 guys hitting value. That's the realistic range of outcome for, a contest or a slate. These are your top 10 scorers, but typically there's like, 16, 17, 18 guys, depending on, the carnage that we see in a race that are actually trying to fight to be a top 10 scorer on DFS. Everybody else just doesn't have a chance and stuff. And obviously these are more teams on where they kind of fall in line here and stuff like that. Obviously, we're not playing any of the guys in the back of the field. We look at the Xfinity Series slate. We're looking at these green flag laps. We're typically looking at around 200 laps for all of these races here. Yet again, we're using Charlotte, Las Vegas, or at least Stukas is using Charlotte, Kansas, and Las Vegas for this. Yet again, big round of applause for him putting in the. I didn't mean to make that sound like, big round of applause and clap twice, right? But got to hand it to him for putting stuff in a very easy to read, easy to understand format for people to see and use, and for us to have an idea of how to look into these contests. Yet again, this is not, whenever I look at the tracks and why my track groups are so big is because I typically look at how people are running in terms of speed and in terms of their top 10, top 5, top 15 percentage of laps ran and stuff. We're looking at these because these are the three similar tracks, or the three most similar tracks in terms of DFS contests. Okay, so that's why we're using these three laps. We go ahead and look at the amount of green flag laps that we're seeing in these races. We're looking pretty much standard from anywhere from 130 to 180 laps. We typically see more or carnage at Kansas. That's why we're seeing, now granted, Kansas did have 167 green flag laps here, but that's why we do see Kansas having some of the lower green flag laps, just because we do have more carnage and crashes at Kansas. Not saying it can't happen in Las Vegas, but that is important to note here. Kind of same old. I mean, you guys can pause this and look at it yourself, or you can join the Discord and grab it yourself. Yet again, this will all be behind the paywall on TrueDFS once we end up finalizing our new website, add in all the tools. Yet again, we did add the partnership with PayDirt. We have Stukas' tools coming up. We have a lot of things going on the site. A lot of people have asked me why we don't have a promo code going on right now. Well, that is because we are not even expecting. We will be increasing pricing once everything is finalized on the site, once everything's updated. If you do notice right now, if you look at memberships, hey, yet again, we've been warning people that we're increasing prices. If you notice, NASCAR package was $30 last week. It's $35. Final price is going to be $40 once everything's done. Once we end up adding all the tools here and upgrading the site and everything. Like, this is not just a NASCAR package. This is not just a site that has projections with a SaberSim partnership. I mean, we have a vast amounts of tools, projections for nearly every single sport on here. We want this to be a main hub for you guys to be able to use really anything you need. If you want to go in the sports betting, if you want to go look there, PayDirt has a lot of things to help you in that situation. If you want to get better at MME, if you want to just have a baseline of just not, sitting on the toilet making lineups and stuff, like, that's why we have a partner with SaberSim. If you have it with any of these outside of the NASCAR package, any of these packages, you have PayDirt added on. Like, I mean, this is a phenomenal value if you're looking for a place to get DFS tools and to help make DFS lines. Like, prices will go up. That's why we don't have a promo code. I mean, this is the promo period right now, basically, because all these prices will move up. As we continue to go through and look at the Xfinity series and stuff, kind of the same, or we see similar ranges of outcomes as we looked for the Truck series, but yet again, this is the main area of focus for me specifically when we're looking at where we're coming from. Yet again, we're going to notice that for whatever reason, it just so happens that when we look at the pole sitter in these races, where is number one at? Two instances of the pole sitter being a top 10, we're looking at top 25, but I mean, very, very few times do we see the pole sitter be there. Okay, yet again, kind of not even contrarian, but I mean, this is a range where I probably played the pole sitter probably too much. That's how it is. I probably need to play him less. Yet again, we look at the teams. Where are the teams? Joe Gibbs. Penske isn't here anymore, but Joe Gibbs. We have Haas, Junior Motorsports, Joe Gibbs. Like, this is where your lap leaders are going to be coming from. It's going to be these fast guys. Yet again, a small pool of who could realistically be the lap leaders in these races. It's going to be the good guys. It's going to be the good guys in the good cars. If you've shown talent at intermediates before and you're put into a good car, or you're in a good car and you are able to show quite a lot of speed in practice, and then you're able to qualify at least in the top 5, like, you have a real chance of leading laps. And if you're a good driver who just has a bad lap and we're still expecting you, like a place differential of, John Hunter Nemechek starting 12th, or Allgaier starting 16th, like, there's a real chance that you're going to be up there at the end of the day. We end up going through and we look at place differential stuff. As I stated, we see a lot of guys who are starting first just happen to not end up scoring well. When we look at some of the worst scores here, it's because we're like, through these races, Cole Custer, unfortunate, starts first, finishes second. Sam Mayer starts first, finishes third. Brandon Jones starts first, finishes fourth. Jones, first 6. Ty Gibbs, first to 9th. Herbst, first to 12th. First to 15th from Hendrick. First to 17th, Jones. First to 8th. Like, there is a real chance that your pole sitter is not the fastest guy in these races, We then look at the scoring threshold, pretty much identical to what we were seeing in the Truck Series, if not kind of, Truck Series was 40, 42. This one is 40 and 41, but we're pretty much looking at the same outcomes for your scoring threshold of your top 10 scores in these races here. Obviously, these are your teams that you can go through and look at here. So that's the Truck and Xfinity, kind of, very, very similar and stuff, which I think is usually easier to project for with the length of the Cup Series and the amount of teams trying to do stuff. We see stuff being spread a lot more in the Cup Series, whereas the Truck and Xfinity, it's usually easier to pinpoint or have an idea of who those drivers could be that are going to be competing for the win. As we go up and look for the Cup Series, now yet again, we're just using Kansas and Vegas for the data on your screen here, mainly because those are the two closest in terms of contests outcomes, because at Dover, for this example here of what's on the screen, Dover's 400 laps. Coca-Cola 600 is 400 laps. Stukas, for this, didn't want to include Darlington or Pocono and any of that. So yet again, this is the way he views things. So these are the two closest similar contest types between these races here. So we look at the laps led and fast laps by finishing position, and we do see there are quite a lot. You know, if yet again your lap leader and second is going to carry a lot, but if you look at the median for these, we have 8 for third, 9 for fourth, 6 for fifth. So your top 5 finishers are all, you have to project them to have some sort of fast laps or laps led in these races. You continue to go through the top 10, and we're still seeing, 3. We see, 1. I mean that wasn't a good example, 3 and 1, but we are seeing laps led and fast laps being distributed between, finishers in the top 10, and then also, obviously guys who run into issues or get wrecked out and stuff. These are clearly, early lap leaders who got involved in crashes and stuff. You look at fast laps by finishing position, and this not only shows the finishing position, but shows the amount of yet again, this is by finishing position, but if you visualize this as a running grid of first, second, third, fourth, like where these guys are running, and their chances of getting a fast lap in any individual lap, I would argue that it's pretty close to this, So even if you're running 9th, 10th, 7th, 11th, if you have a fast car, you will be scraping off a fast lap here or there, especially when the leader starts getting into traffic. So it's not just your lap leader or your top finisher getting all the fast laps and laps led. It's going to be spread out at least between the top 12 drivers for the most part. Obviously, your laps led are clearly going to be centered around the guys who finish up front, but still always good to note. We look at your highest guys here. Now, yet again, unlike Truck and Xfinity, to where we've seen the data showing that, hey, man, pole sitter sometimes might not be the best guy. We're seeing that a lot of people who are able to have a great practice, qualify up front, is going to be a huge front runner for those who are going to lead laps in these races here. Pretty much we're just seeing first and second up here. Obviously, we see some thirds and fourth, and as we go back, we see other guys who had place differential and who also got up to the lead. But these are the people that you want to be looking at. Yet again, this is all just Las Vegas and Kansas, and also all just next-gen races and stuff. We then look at the 3 major teams of who are getting fast laps and laps led in these races. That's Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, and 23XI. As to note, we have seen Bubba Wallace get laps led and fast laps at other immediate tracks. Obviously, this is just Las Vegas and Kansas, but we did see Bubba lead at Texas recently. But for the most part, this is pretty much all Tyler Reddick. And we're seeing that Hendrick Motorsports is being carried, which I'm not mistaken, by Kyle Larson and William Byron. We do see some Alex Bowman in there. When we're looking at Joe Gibbs, it's pretty much just all coming from Bell and Hamlin. So if we're looking at the teams who are competing, and then we look in more detail of the drivers who are competing for laps led, your major guys, your 5 guys that I would consider, yet again, we're not looking at salary. We set projections based on where the starting grid is and what we think is going to happen in the race, blah, 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 blah. But Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick are your 5 favorites entering the Las Vegas race. I would be shocked if they weren't everybody's favorites, but those are the guys that we would be looking at as favorites entering this race here. And again, your place differential and where people go, so on and so forth. Scoring thresholds. Now, for the Cup Series, we do see, obviously, more laps and more things to happen and more place differential available. We're looking at nearly, when we start looking at intermediate tracks, because not only do we have a lot of fast laps, we have, obviously, leader getting laps led. We understand that anybody really in the top 12 at any given point can get fast laps. We then look at that of people who have just a bad qualifying session, but have shown speed at intermediates, that have shown speed in practice starting in the 20s and 30s. We see a drastic increase of scoring thresholds for your top 10 drivers, okay? So on average, we're looking at the guy who was scoring, the 7th amount of let's get to one I can pull up. The guy scoring the 8th amount of DraftKings points, minimum's 42 points, median's 47. I mean, we are looking at damn near 50 points all the way to 8th. We look at mid-40s all the way to 10th. I mean, 42 is 10th. Yeah, like, if you cannot score over 40 points, I cannot see myself playing you. I cannot stress that enough. If somebody's projected for like fucking 27 points, I don't want them, okay? And again, then obviously we see, where we're at here. Then obviously the teams and stuff, we talked about this, at this point stuff. For FanDuel, very quickly, your laps led by finishing position, very much correlated. Laps down by finishing position, we're typically looking at 28 guys being on lead lap, give or take. But just from this, we'll go back up and look at the lead lap finishers once we're done looking here. But these are your points, finishes distribution stuff, your top 25. And this is just the lap leaders in these races here. You can see where all the lap leaders are coming from, or at least your top 25 here, because dominators and FanDuel are just lap leaders and stuff. We look at the distribution, and this is even more aggressive. This just shows the laps led in these races. Joe Gibbs 2311 Trackhouse with Suarez either running long during races or Chesney trying to gain the lead on pit strategy and stuff like that. But it's just these 4 teams. I cannot realistically envision any other team leading laps outside of those drivers there. Then obviously your points and everything like that. Going back up, let's just take a quick look at these 2 races and see where are these races here with the amount of green flag laps and the amount of drivers and the lead lap at the end of the races. Now, yet again, Kansas usually has more yellows than Las Vegas. Okay, so we look at Kansas lap. Your races last year, Kansas had 31 and 32 drivers on the lead lap. Las Vegas in the spring had 31. Las Vegas in the fall had 22 or 21. And then we continue. I would lean more towards races that are having people in the amount of 20s left on lead lap than what we've seen with the 30s here. But whatever, anything can happen here. I do want to go ahead and look at last year's lap by lap data for some guys of note while that loads. Yet again, as I've gone through, obviously I have 2 videos up so far: the Coda contest review and the what did we run just now? The Phoenix contest review. That was uploaded. I would really, really like to see that have more than 40 views or whatever the heck we're looking at right now. That's kind of disappointing. I know some people like it. Some people are passionate about. Well, we got 75 on this one, 126 here. That, not gonna lie, that's kind of disappointing because that's a lot of me talking and going through stuff that I could just not very easily I could just do on my own and not go through it in detail. So I would like more views on that, please. But as we've gone through and looked at stuff, you are noticing that, hey, man, this looks kind of different than the last video. Yeah, we are making adjustments pretty much every day, making sure it's ready to go live, making sure it's easier to go live, so on and so forth. Here, we are looking at the South Point 400, which was the fall race last year in the Cup Series here. So we're looking at this race here, 267 laps. 40-car field. We look at the race results for this race. What the heck, dude? Hold on, brother man. We'll do this live. We'll see if we can get this thing to work live. As I had just done this before. Data. Let's do race results. What are we doing here? All right, hold on. Let me pause really fast. All right, cool. Just loading error. Just a little wait on the server. That's all. Yet again, we're working on making sure everything is going to work when we get there. We look at the fall race last year. Okay, we see where everybody finished here. Obviously, their PD and stuff like that. We see the amount of fast laps and laps led they got in these situations here. Percentage run in top 3, top 5, and top 3 fast laps or top 3% of fast laps, top 5% of fast laps. Well, a lot of things here just be able to look at and stuff. But when we look at the running positions of these drivers here, let's go ahead and look back at how I was ranking stuff. So this is how I look at stuff in terms of recent form for this race here. Now, yet again, I was pretty tilted because I had a metric ton of Tyler Reddick and he rolled over. He flipped the car last year at Las Vegas. Where the heck is this guy, dude? We look at him compared to, now what we're looking to get here is the percentage that we see on the race results right now. That's why we're seeing errors occurred here. But we're seeing where Reddick was at in terms of where he was running these races here. Obviously, we do see the correct yellows being displayed here, so that's good. We look at your fastest guys from I have here. So I have Bell, Byron, Logano, Truex, Bowman Tricks he's not in the field this year, so we can just look at Bell, Byron, Logano, and Bowman. That's a lot of B's. A lot of B's. We look at Bell, Bowman, Byron, and good old Joseph Logano. And we look at where these guys are at in terms of speed. These are your fastest guys from my data that I have in this race, whether it was able to get through the field and whatnot. And we see that Joseph Logano was able to get a ton of fast laps early, but this is where everybody ran in line at. Yet again, the reason I brought up Tyler Reddick is because I need to re-add the getting the thing thicker, dude. We see Tyler Reddick was right in contention for this race up until he lost some positions due to the yellow that happened in this situation here. He gets kind of forced back that he flips over, obviously, right? And because of that, through looking at where Reddick and stuff had been performing, towards the end of last year at similar tracks, yet again, I like using Darlington and stuff like this, but we look at the amount of laps that they were, or the amount of fast laps that he was getting in situations like this. I really, really liked him for Vegas, so I played a ton of him there, and then I tilted because he flipped over. I didn't play him at Homestead. He ended up having the best car at Homestead. But when we're looking at Reddick, Bell, we look at Byron, we look at Larson. Like these are probably your favorite guy, your favorites of people entering these races and stuff. You can see where they were at in these races here and so on and so forth. Do we have the fast lap? We're still working on this. We're trying to make sure. However, I do like what we're working on here. Yet again, this is just last year's race. Which yet again, just kind of speaking out loud, I know we are finalizing, making sure this stuff works, but this is the idea that we want to look at of where are the fast laps coming from, right? So like your leader versus the top 5 versus outside the top 10, so on and so forth. Or basically like these being your top 10 and outside the top 5 or whatever. But yeah, this is where we are at now. I do believe we should have everything pretty identical. This is what I've been asking for, is the running position of the fastest laps on these. But anyway, this is the Las Vegas preview. I do believe that's about it. We will talk about all 3 of the Las Vegas races in the live shows this week. Past that, I will talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting a refresh, whatever the case may be. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.